Hello, my name is B.J. Paris. Welcome to Tapping Into His Treasures. Today I'd like to talk about laughter. The Bible says in Proverbs 17:22 that a merry heart doeth good like a medicine. And just this morning I looked up on the internet laughter, and I want to read you what I read. Laughter triggers healthy physical changes in the body. Humor and laughter strengthen your immune system, boost your energy, diminish pain, and protect you from the damaging effects of stress. Laughter brings your mind and body back into balance. Humor lightens your burdens and keeps you grounded, focused, and alert. I looked up endorphins because I know that when we laugh that endorphins are released from our brain. I was truly intrigued by what I read on the internet. It just explained what actually happens when endorphins are released and how they actually alleviate stress and take away pain and all the rest. It just explains it in detail. I would encourage you to look it up. Very interesting information. And here's an old Yiddish saying pertaining to laughter. You'll like this. What soap is to the body, laughter is to the soul. Ponder that. I'd like to share with you some of the funny events of my life. And I'm certain, more than certain, that I would have not survived all my trials all through the years had it not been for laughter. This is just a short little story of something that happened about a year ago. I have a friend named David. He's a teacher over in Finland. And he's on Facebook, as are quite a few hundred of my friends. And he happened to be writing, I think it was from Maine originally. And he happened to be writing on Facebook about how much he missed Maine lobster and shrimp and what he wouldn't do to have a nice lobster dinner. And I was just being real nonchalant, and I just wrote back and made a comment how my son had taken me out for a 2-pound lobster that year for Mother's Day. And I made another comment about the price of shrimp at that particular time a couple of years ago, and I think it was only like 60 or 65 cents a pound, right in the middle of shrimp season. So I just made that comment, and he wrote back and said, "BJ, you are sadistic," with a big exclamation point. And it just cracked me up. You know, it just tickled my funny bone, just the way I read it. And I don't think he meant it to be funny, but I took it that way, and it was hysterical. So you know what I'm talking about. And you all have funny stories as well that keep you as well as they keep me. Another little story happened a year and a half ago. It was Christmas time. And I went to see my son and his family in Brunswick and my son and his family in Freeport. And after I left the second one's house, it was very, very icy. I attempted to drive away, and my car wouldn't budge. It was like I was on ice, and I couldn't get any traction. So I called my son from the car on my cell phone. My grandson answered, and I said, "David, would you and your dad come out here and help give me a push? Because I'm stuck on the ice." So they came out, and they were pushing, and they were pushing. And then all of a sudden, my son said to me, "Mom, I guess they got to ask you the $64,000 question." I'm going, "Yeah." He said, "Is your emergency brake on?" And I went, "Oh my gosh, yes it is." And we all laughed. And the reason being was, at my other son's, his house is up on a hill, and I know it's not a good idea to put the emergency brake on, because you could forget about it. But I did, and I forgot to release it when I left Brunswick to go to Freeport. So we all had a laugh over that. Oh, this one is really precious. I have a family from Ethiopia that lives in Randallstown, Maryland. And I used to live in the suburbs of Baltimore. And I knew my girlfriend Abby, from 1990, so it's like 20 years that we're friends now. So she's got 2 little girls. They're like 9 and 5 now, something like that. Well, when the little one, whose name is Maya, when she was just barely able to talk, well, maybe she was 3 or so. Just picture this. They call me Auntie. However, they're black and I'm white, and the little one at the time wasn't that familiar with white people. I mean, she may have seen them in the store or something, but she just never had anybody that was white in our house except for me. So it was winter, and the whole family was in the car, and it was very cold and windy this one particular day. And the little Maya happened to be looking out the window, and she saw this lady wrapped up in a heavy winter coat, and she must have, she was probably expressing that she was cold by putting her arms together like that. So the little Maya looked out the window and saw the lady, and she said to her parents, "Oh, look, Auntie BJ is cold." She didn't know what to call the woman, and it confused her because the woman was white, so she couldn't talk and express herself. So every white woman that she saw, she considered to be Auntie BJ. That was her way of expressing herself. So, "Look, Mommy and Daddy, Auntie BJ's cold." And I just thought that was so precious and so cute, and I certainly have laughed over and over again just thinking about that. And check my notes. Well, this little story isn't a funny story per se. It was like my lifetime most embarrassing moment. And I learned from it, and it cured me. But now that I look back on it, it's funny looking back. And we all know what that's like. So I'm going to share that with you. And you may think I'm a fruitcake or too transparent, but that's okay. So anyway, it goes back, I don't know how many years ago. It could be 35, I would say 35, 38 years ago. And my family went to a fair in Maine. One of these towns, okay? So we were at a fair, and I used to have to lie down during the day a lot more than I do now because of arrhythmia or something from the heart, and I would get palpitations. So I'd have to lie flat on the back seat of the car. So my mom was with me, and we walked out to the parking lot, and my husband and the kids were off playing games or whatever you do at a fair, maybe in an exhibition hall. So we're in the car. My mom's in the front and I'm in the back, and the windows are open because it was very, very hot. And I guess we had met some family members from another section of Maine there. Family members from the other side of the family who we weren't close with at all. Now, let me back up and say that during this time, God was teaching me, He was convicting me of sin in my life because I was a brand new Christian. And, you know, it just doesn't happen at the snap of a finger. You have to go through a process of overcoming sin in your life, whatever form it's in. So, I was gossiping or talking about people, one is the same as the other, and I was telling my mom about some of these family members that I'm describing to you. And I said some things that weren't pleasant. And we kind of just dropped the subject, and not much was happening, just that I was resting. And then all of a sudden, I happened to look out the window at the car parked to the right of us. And there was nobody in the car that could be seen. But all of a sudden, I saw cigarette smoke. It was smoke, and I knew it was cigarette smoke. It did like a spiral. In the back seat, a spiral of smoke going up to the ceiling. And I realized somebody was lying down in the back seat of that car having a cigarette. And I also realized whose car it was. It was the same car as the person that I was talking about. So I want to tell you that I was so embarrassed. I could have died. I could have died, and I couldn't even tell my mother what was wrong because the window was down and I couldn't speak. So quietly, I just rolled up the window and I'm going, Ma, Ma. And I'm telling her, I'm going like, Ma. I could have died, but I will tell you this, as far as the lesson that I learned, that was the last time that I ever gossiped about anybody. I learned my lesson firsthand, and I wasn't sorry about it. You know, I was embarrassed, and I was sorry that I had offended the person, and believe me, my name became mud. Oh my gosh. My name was mud after that, and it probably still is. So I ended up losing friends and family, but I learned a big lesson, a valuable lesson. So now, all these years later, we were just talking about it in my neighborhood the other day, because now my neighbors and I, all being the same age, seniors, we have time to reflect and reminisce. So we were doing that. We were doing that the other morning, and I happened to bring that up. We were talking about life's embarrassing moments, and it struck me so funny that I just couldn't stop laughing. Just seeing myself in that car and looking over and see that smoke going up, nobody visible, just the cigarette smoke. So it's really funny to be able to look back and to laugh at my failures, and to just laugh at my predicament. And we have to laugh at ourselves. But if we learn from it and then laugh, that's a good thing. Let's see. Oh, this is kind of funny. It was a year and a half. No, it was 2.5 years ago. I was in Connecticut driving with my son. I was driving, and he was starving, so he was going to eat a sandwich, and I was driving. And he needed a napkin. And I happened to just point. I was pointing next to me, next to the driver's seat, and he thought I was pointing on the floor, because I had a bunch of stuff, paper towels on the floor. So he went and picked up without my realizing it, picked up the paper towel and started wiping his face. And what he had picked up was a paper towel that I had thrown down with sugar all over it, because before I got in the car that morning, I had made what we call an Italian pizza frite, which is fried dough, and we always sprinkle white granulated sugar over our fried dough. And so I had been driving and eating this fried dough before I went to his house to pick him up, and I wiped my face with it, and all the white sugar got on the paper towel, and I was driving, so I just threw it on the floor. And when I pointed next to me, he thought I was pointing on the floor, and he picked up this sugar-coated paper towel, and he's wiping his face with it. And he had white sugar all over his face, and it was just the funniest thing. You really would have to have been there. So funny. I remember saying to him, Tony, it's a good thing I don't get stopped. I didn't get stopped by a policeman, because you look like you're on coke. Isn't that what coke, they say, it's like a sugary looking or something from one of your... But that's the first thing that went through my mind. It's a good thing a policeman didn't stop us. So, but the other thing I want to bring out with that little story is our hearts were so heavy, because my mom was in the nursing home in her last days, and our hearts were so heavy, 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 and God just allowed that laughter just to release us from the pain and the suffering we were going through. Isn't that just like Him? I have a couple more here. Oh, these last two I'm going to read from my book, Reflections. Let's see. Oh, that one's back here. I used to work as a home health aide before my back got worse. And in fact, this lady I'm going to tell you about, a precious lady named Elizabeth. She was a stroke victim and in a wheelchair. And that job is really what aggravated my back condition so bad that I had to go on disability. I couldn't even work anymore. I would have to lift her into the wheelchair, and then when she was in the wheelchair, I would have to lift her in the chair to take her out on the sun deck, and there was like a walk-off, so I would have to lift the chair and then again lift it over the hump to get back into her apartment. And 8 times a day I had to lift her. And like I said, that's what aggravated my back condition. But anyway, stop and think of this for a minute. This wonderful lady used to be a school teacher, and she had a stroke when she was only 58 years old. Isn't that awful? So anyway, just imagine this. It had been about 5 years since she was in the wheelchair. I think she was 63 at the time. And her family all pitched in, and they took care of her, and then they got me. And they still had, I wasn't there 24 hours a day, so they still had a fair amount of work to do. So I kept thinking, oh my goodness, if only she could speak, I know she would have so much to say. And I used to talk like body language. We understood each other, and I'd make her laugh. And that would make my day, just to make her laugh. But anyway, back to this, this heartfelt wish that I had, that she could communicate to her family. Maybe there's something that she could communicate to me that I could pass on to her family. And so anyway, at the time, those handheld palm computers, whatever they called them, they were popular. And my mother bought me one for Christmas, and I was so happy to get it. And I bought one of those collapsible keyboards to go with it, so that I could take it to work, and that I could teach my client Elizabeth to use the typewriter. And it excited me, because here she wasn't able to talk, but maybe she could use her hands to communicate what was on her heart all those years. So we had practice for a couple of days, and I would put the wheelchair up to the dining room table and put her hands on the keyboard, and I'd watch her do what well, at first she was like all over it, and it took her a day or so to steady her hands and to be able to do it correctly. So, now let me just back up for 1 minute. Simultaneous with my getting the palm-held computer and the keyboard, I was working on a project at Elizabeth's house, a portfolio, because I've always had a lot of medical problems, so I didn't know how long I was going to live. And I thought, I don't want to stick all my business on my kids when I die. So I worked on this portfolio, and I've updated it many times since. And on this I have all my account numbers, like my electric bill, the account number, and the phone bill, and all the telephone numbers to the electric company, and all my doctors' names, all their phone numbers, all my friends' names, so much more. I just can't think of everything right now, but it's such a thorough portfolio. Car payments, just anything that they would have to deal with in the event of my demise. So I was doing that, and Elizabeth, I shared this with Elizabeth, and she knew that I was working on that. So fast forward, so we're back at the dining room table with the keyboard and the palm-held computer, and Elizabeth's going to write her first message to her family in 5 years of communication. So in my mind, I was just as excited as she was. And I'm thinking to myself, what are her first words going to be? And I thought they would be something like, "Dear Bill," that's her husband, "Dear Bill, thank you so much for all the wonderful care you've been giving me all these years." So I waited with this great anticipation, and I'm watching the typewriter, and I'm watching what she's typing up on the little tiny monitor. So she writes, "Dear," and one 4-letter word took her probably 20 minutes to write. It just took that long for each letter. D-E-A-R, Dear Tommy. Tommy was one of her 5 children, grown men. Dear Tommy, comma, I am helping BJ write. And I said, Elizabeth, if you write what I think you're going to write, I'm going to pee my pants. Excuse my language. And she wrote, finished writing, I am helping BJ write her funeral. And I lost it. I lost it. I lost it. I have never laughed so hard in my entire life. Here I thought she was going to write something extremely sentimental toward her husband and her family. And what does she write? I am helping BJ to write her funeral. Isn't that hysterical? Oh my goodness. That laughter did me so much good though. I'm sure all those endorphins were released and all that good stuff. It was amazing. Amazing. Here's a cute little story about my youngest son. Okay, I'm going to read this one to you from the book so I don't forget anything and you get the whole of it. It's named Good Eye, Good Eye. This short story is not a testimony per se. However, it is an incident about family, fun, and laughter, without which we would shrivel up and die if we were not blessed of God in these things. Corey, that was my young son, must have been around 11 years old when I dropped him and the neighbor boy at the school field for the soccer game one late afternoon in October when dusk was approaching. A game was already in progress when we arrived, so I stood on the sidelines with the other fans and did my share of cheering while waiting for Corey and Bill to play the next game. Pardon me. So they started to play. Go, Corey, go! Watch that ball, I shouted at the top of my lungs, along with all the other soccer game shouts I used to know while the 2 new teams ran out into the field. I cheered like a first-class nut, jumping up and down as the darkness began to set in around us. Mom, our game was postponed, a voice said from behind. It was Corey. Here I am screaming his name and rooting and tooting for him, and he wasn't even on the field playing soccer. Can you imagine how hysterical that was? I mean, with all these people around me, and I'm like, I must have appeared like a nutcase. So it was embarrassing and funny, but it was good that I could laugh at myself. And I hope you can laugh at yourself too. And one last one that I'm going to tell you from my memory. And this happened, I want to say about 2 years ago. Some friends and I went down to Marlborough, Massachusetts, to a church conference, a missionary conference. And I was staying overnight with my friend Dolores, who lives in Sharon. And her sister was there also. Her sister's from Milo, Maine. So we went to the Friday night session, stayed overnight at her house. We stayed up really late talking. Her husband and I got up early the next morning, and he made me, he's a Jewish man, he made me lox and bagels for breakfast. And then we got ready to go to the morning session, and I forgot to say that my friend lives just shy of an hour away from the Marlborough church. Say 55 minutes. So we left in plenty of time to get to the morning session on time. And the 3 of us were just chatting away in Dolores' car, having a wonderful time. Just we were, you know, when the body of Christ gets together, I call it drinking from each other. Just sharing in the Holy Spirit of God. And it was a nice day, pleasant day, nice ride, and we just kept driving and driving, and we were never at a loss for words. We covered so many different things. And we're going on and on and on, riding on the highway, and then all of a sudden, it just dawned on us, and I don't remember exactly who it was that said, gee, shouldn't we be there by now? Seems like we've been riding quite a while. And we looked at the clock, and it was 3 hours later. And it only took shy of an hour to get there from our house. So here we are 3 hours later, and we had just gone by a sign on the highway, welcome to Connecticut. We had driven all the way into Connecticut. I know it sounds crazy, 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 like only women could do this, but it was hysterical. We just talked so much that we drove for 3 hours and passed the Connecticut sign, and we had to turn around, and we were running out of gas. We had to go for a gas station and fill up with gas and get directions from somebody on how to get back to Marlborough. And we got there, and of course we had to tell everybody what happened because they were all wondering where we were, especially the people that I was riding back to Maine with. And it was embarrassing. We felt so stupid and foolish. But again, the other side of that was that it was very, very funny. Very funny. And we'll never forget it. You know, like when we talk to each other or phone each other or see each other, we remember that. It's one of our stories. So my wish for all the viewers today is that you are blessed with laughter, that God blesses you, so that all those little endorphins could be released in your mind and alleviate stress and tension. That's my wish for you. God bless you. God bless yours. God keep you and God keep yours. Thank you for watching.